Simple thing, with the person next to you, who are these people? What is happening, or what has happened before this photo was taken? Okay? So, who are the people? How are they feeling? What happened before the photo was taken? When we're doing these outcomes, we work with National Geographic Learning, and the first time I thought of this, I imagined like photos of bears kind of in the wild catching salmon or something like this. And there's not much to say about something like that. The pictures look spectacular, but you say it's a lovely photo. But actually when you look at the database of photos that they have, often there are lots of just interesting photos. And I think you could find similar things on Google or on Flickr, perhaps, if you look on Flickr, where we're looking for photos which will generate conversation. So this is my main thought about doing it. Okay, so we have our discussion. What I'd like you to do now is to think back on what you just said. And can you write 2 sentences, at least sentences? They might even be a sentence and a reply, or a sentence and 2 sentences, like we had with Samad's thing of the kind of horizontal development, that you think your intermediate students may not know. Okay? So we're thinking of the things that we said, what of those things could we teach to our intermediate students? So here are some sentences which I had. They were kind of based on doing the class actually with other students. Okay? Anybody have anything similar? Just have a quick look. Anything similar? So, for example, hands up if you talked about the kid being a bit naughty. Quite a few, okay? Hands up if you had a discussion about there being an argument. Okay? Hands up about anybody, something to do with the mother, perhaps, being soft on the children in the argument. Did anybody have that? One person over there. Okay. So, what you see is basically the kinds of things I thought of are the kinds of things you thought of, and they're the kinds of things that the students will think of. Okay? So, what do we do with this language? Normally, this is what I would do. We'd have the discussion. I would write sentences like this on the board. Okay? Maybe not quite so many. Might only be 4, sometimes 5, depends on the students. And I would do something to focus attention on some of the new language, or language which the students weren't maybe not absolutely sure of. Any suggestions what I might do? It's very simple. Different types of emotions, yeah. So, but what might I do with the sentences here? I've written them on the board. I want to focus attention. What might I do? Underline something. Close, but not quite, actually. And maybe a paraphrase. Sometimes, but not usually, because usually these are like paraphrases of what the students are saying already. So obviously, my students didn't exactly say these things. They tried to say these things. So they will say things like, man, bad mood, or maybe bad, angry. They have arguments. So that's what the student says, and what I create is the kind of correct sentence, if you like. Now, what I do is I gap them. I put a gap in the sentence. So I kind of will have, he blank, a bit fed up. I think they might blank had an argument, for example. Or maybe just he blank a bit fed up. I think they might have had an argument. And then the next one I might have, the boy looks blank, he's been a bit naughty. Okay? And then I would ask the student, so what do you think the missing word is? And the students say, is. Yeah, could be. But, we're just seeing it. We're not sure. Any other ideas? So that's my first thing. So just with the person next to you, what other kind of things might you gap in these sentences? So I give you 2 examples. So you have looks, perhaps, and then I might say, the boy looks blank, he's been a bit naughty. I say, what's the missing word? Some students might know, some might not. I give them like, and then I ask, so why like here, but not in the other one? And then again, the students, I don't expect them really to know the answers. I might just say, yeah, because here's an adjective, here it's followed by a clause or a sentence. So I'm just drawing attention to it. Later in the unit, actually, we look at that as a piece of grammar. Or later in the book, it might turn up as a piece of grammar. But I'm looking at it as a kind of constant revisiting and overseeing what they're doing. Phrasal verbs. So yes, we could have the get away with it, bring up the kids, spoils maybe. Yep. Give in, exactly. Okay. So we might, I would tend to maybe, the boy looks being a bit naughty, but he's got blank with it. Or, they get everything they ask blank. Okay, and I would elicit the preposition. Or you could give them the preposition and elicit the verb. Or if you've taught it before, as may be the case, I might blank everything. The get away with it. I might blank the whole phrasal verb. There's a slight difference though when we have vocabulary as the gap compared to grammar. When it's grammar, like look and look like, I think you can just say, what's the missing word? Okay? When it's vocabulary, to elicit it from the students, we basically need to give them the meaning. So what I would do, say if it was got away with it, I might go, the boy looks like he's been a bit naughty, but the parents, they did nothing. There was no punishment. There's a phrasal verb for this. Do you know what it is? And then I don't maybe expect the students to know. Or if I've taught it before, I said, we had it yesterday, or we had it last week. Do you remember? If it's completely new, I would maybe then give them with, so I give them clues, and if nobody has it, I just give them the clue. But you need to give the meaning to be able to elicit it from the students, okay? So yes, great. Any other suggestions of ones? Yes, the modals, like the might, exactly, or yes, so again, the grammar ones. Could be the collocations. So which collocations would you go for? Set boundaries, okay, yes, okay. So they eat their greens, exactly, okay, so things like that. There's no correct answer, okay? You choose what you want to gap for what, maybe what principles you have or what thing you feel is more important. The point is we're engaging with the students as the kind of feedback. Now, normally, in an ideal world, what I'm doing is actually listening to what the students are actually trying to say, and I'm writing what they really wanted to say on the board. The reality is, for example, we have a big room. You can't hear everybody. It's in the morning, we're tired. We have to, it's quite a process, so we have to interpret what the students are trying to say, think about how to say it better, write it on the board, think what the best word to gap is. It's quite difficult. So actually what I do is exactly what you've just done. I cheat. So all I do is, in my preparation, I have a speaking task. I think what I would say, and I write some sentences down, which I think the students might say as well, and might benefit from. And I gap them in the lesson, so I have my list of sentences on a piece of paper. I write them up afterwards, and I say, oh yeah, the brilliant discussion. I heard somebody say this. They tried to say this. It was very interesting. I agree with them. And I write it up, and that's the process I do. Okay? Any suggestions what we might do with this language? Okay, so one thing might be to take what else can you be fed up with? Or perhaps, have you ever been fed up? You know, when was the last time you were fed up? How did you feel about it? So we could take a couple of the words and write some just a simple task for them to then have a further discussion, which may recycle at least some of the language. Yeah? And we'll be looking at some of these questions this afternoon. Okay, so that's one possibility. Anything else? Yes? Okay, yes, so what we paraphrase I think what I sometimes do is say, yeah, what about in your family? What rules did you have when you were younger? Were your parents strict or liberal? You know, did you get away with anything? And I might just give those kind of simple little tasks, and then they get to re-discuss. Obviously, they will often say different things again. And we could have another repeat of what we've just done. But that's fine, because they do have an opportunity to recycle some of the language. Okay, so yes, so this is a similar kind of idea we have had here, but a nice alternative. Is a discussion on modern parenting. Do you think parenting has changed now to the past? And we could imagine them reusing things like they were stricter in the past, you know, modern parents don't set boundaries, etc. Okay, we might have like rules for the ideal family. Okay, you get the idea, and then they're looking at things like recycling things like make and let and stuff like that. Okay, all great ideas, thank you very much. I do also do one other thing, which is nothing. Sometimes I just move on to the next exercise. Time is narrow, etc. And the way I think of this, if we think about principles, you know, when we learn vocabulary, the suggestion is you need to see it 6 to 10 to 12 times before it becomes your productive language. That's not 6 times today, that's 6 times over a period of time. So the way I conceive of this kind of thing is some of these words will be the first time. So, you know, for some groups I would imagine, you know, I might not even teach them set boundaries for an intermediate group, it depends. But, you know, if there are some stronger students, I would expect to be their first time they see this. Okay? It will come up in the book perhaps, or the set at least, that kind of idea of setting will come back with another collocation later in the book or later in their conversations. Some of it will be the second or third time. Perhaps they've seen naughty before. And we're kind of just regurgitating it, reminding the students. So, you know, I think it's great to do a further task, but it's not absolutely necessary. We shouldn't feel guilty if the students don't do it. Yes?
So do you somehow get back to these vocabulary?
So, yeah. Okay, so do I come back to this vocabulary in the future? Yes, so sometimes I might, I would say I won't come back to all of it. You know, what I'm kind of recommending is a language-rich classroom. We can't come back to it all the time. Otherwise, we'd be just doing the same lesson endlessly, in effect. But I might do, for example, the following day, I might ask them a simple revision. Can you remember the language which came up with this task? Or look in your notebook, which of these, choose 3 phrases that you've forgotten the meaning of. Okay, everybody stand up, find somebody who can explain the meaning to you. Okay, so that might be a little revision task. And I would do things like that. There are some other ones which we may come back to later. Okay, a couple of minutes left. Yeah, so just the last slide. So, ignore dialogue building. It's basically, think about this. So in terms of kind of, if you like, teaching lexically, the important thing is, for me, is that I'm not treating what the students, it's a little bit what Vitaly was saying yesterday, that we're trying to encourage the students to express themselves in the best way they can. And that we shouldn't be criticizing, we should be recognizing what they have communicated. So all of the sentences that I write up on the board are things that the students have tried to say and I've understood. Occasionally I've misunderstood them and then that comes out in the feedback. But generally, what the students take from it is a kind of, I communicated and I've also learned something new. So I'm looking at errors not in terms of you missed third person S, or you didn't use a past form, or it should be present perfect, or what. I'm looking at the whole communication. So this is why I'm recommending you do the discussion and you choose a whole sentence. Sometimes what I then might ask is a little bit what Samad did. I might kind of ask, you know, is this a natural thing today? What would you reply? It depends on the task. You know, is there a more natural way of saying it? I would generally avoid synonyms, okay? Partly because you have to think what's happened. The student, for example, said they were bad. The child was bad, did something bad. And I might give them, yeah, he was naughty. So basically, in effect, I've already given them one synonym for what they're trying to say. So to then ask them for another synonym to say the same thing, to me this is, it's like demanding too much. And there are very few real synonyms. So what you end up doing is then kind of creating a confusion, if you like, because this word naughty is not quite used in the same way as badly behaved, etc. And what I'd prefer to do is look at how that word is used. So through the gap fill or the grammar around the phrase that we've been talking about. So then I might get them to drill the language, I might do other things as well, but you get them to remember it in some way. Okay, that's it. That was my little extra thing this morning. And I'll be doing another session this afternoon looking at questions that we can ask about vocabulary and of our students, kind of an idea about concept checking, and also a thing on reading. Okay? Thanks very much. I'm Pascal.